On to our final panel.
Randall.
How can Detroit's vibrant arts and cultural scene continue to lead the way for Detroit's revitalization? What lessons can other cities learn from us? We've gathered a strong group of Detroit's creative, cultural leaders to examine the questions. Please welcome to the stage Robert Elmes, Matt Clayson, J.J. Curtis, Tiff Massey, and Eamon Kaherl.
So we've talked a little bit about startups and the entrepreneur community and sort of what those folks are doing for revitalization here in Detroit. So now we're going to talk to the arts and creative types, the really fun group. There was recently a headline that said why artists should move to Detroit. So I want us to think about that because we're going to come back to that question. Artists and creative types are moving to Detroit and now are being drawn here in large numbers. How can Detroit's growing arts scene, what role will this play as we think about Detroit's revitalization, and really what's needed to provide better support, and what lessons can be learned? So these are some of the types of questions I'm hoping that we can address today together. We have got our largest panel of the day, family, as you can tell, squished in here. First we have Matt Clayson, who's the director of the Detroit Creative Corridor Initiative, an economic development organization who provides support to Detroit's creative industries. Matt, welcome.
Thank you.
We have J.J. Curtis, who's the gallery director for the Liberty Street Collective, a gallery in downtown Detroit that specializes in modern and contemporary exhibits. It was very cool. Checked out your website. Very great. We've got my fellow New Yorker, potentially soon to be a Detroiter, Robert Elmes, who is founded, designed, and built the Galapagos Art Space, Performing Community Arts Center in Detroit, in Williamsburg, and later in Dumbo, Brooklyn. The Galapagos Art Space has been a key venue in building creative energy in Brooklyn. And recently, you've announced that the space is moving here to Detroit, which we'll talk more about in a second. We have Tiff Massey, who is a multimedia, mixed media artist. Many of her large-scale wearable constructors were inspired from African standards of wealth and heavily rooted in 80s iconic hip-hop jewelry. Her work has been featured all over the world, in Brussels to Toronto to Johannesburg, South Africa. So thank you for joining us. And then our final panelist is Amy, and I'm going to butcher you. Thank you. Okay. The executive director of Detroit Soup. Detroit Soup is a really interesting micro-granting dinner organization that celebrates creative projects. Actually brings Detroiters together, which is a really, really interesting magazine. It's been featured in a wealth of national publications. So a very, very cool group. So Tiffany, let's start with you.
Okay.
You are a very successful based Detroit artist. I'd like to get your thoughts on, if someone asked you to characterize or describe Detroit's art and culture community, how would you describe it?
Well, there's a big interest in what's going on here. There's a lot of arts programming that's happening every weekend that wasn't the norm. I mean, it's great. I mean, a lot of people are coming, they're attracted because they want to hold the crown, so to speak, to be the Detroit artist.
What's that mean?
They want to be the Detroit artist. They want to have that title, that branding associated with their practice. So, I mean, even a lot of the products that are that you see nowadays, a lot of people are using Detroit as a brand that wasn't necessarily seen like 3 years ago, 5 years ago. So I feel like that's really interesting. But a lot of things are happening. A lot of people are moving here and providing opportunities for arts. But I think what Detroit really needs is criticism.
Yeah, tell me more about that. That's interesting.
Well, anybody particularly can say that they're artists, and you see a lot of emphasis on murals or people just picking up a paintbrush to be considered in the category of arts. So I see a lot of bad art. Sorry, you guys, I do. So we need somebody to come and like regulate it. So if anything, critics come, not so many artists.
That's great.
You know.
So JJ, maybe you can be our critic a bit. You have been here in the Detroit art scene for a while. You work with cities all over the world, frankly. How would you characterize Detroit's art and culture community? And specifically, how maybe would you characterize it as you compare it to other places?
Well, I mean, I think right now Detroit has and they do right now a very vibrant art scene, which we all know. But in the past probably 15, 20 years, there's been a lack of galleries in the Detroit, especially the downtown central business district of Detroit. And with that, I think there's obviously good and bad. It has made a lot of the local artist community really kind of come together, work together, be more creative, make them have more drive and spirit in what they do, which I think in turn is kind of made the identity of the Detroit art scene kind of more about the people, and the people have the power here and they make it happen. And so I kind of think the identity of the Detroit art scene right now is the spirit of the local artist community. And I think that's a really good thing for the city. Yeah. And a lot of the international artists, obviously we deal a lot with local artists. Actually, Tiff is a local artist that we work with. But we deal with a lot of international artists that come in here, and the biggest thing that they take away from here is the people and their drive and commitment, and they take it with them to all of these different cities that they then go back home to.
And do you see a large demand for people to have their art sort of here and displayed and represented here in the city of Detroit?
Yes, I mean, it's been a big change we opened in September of 2011. And we could have picked up the phone and called a lot of artists that we wanted to work with, and they wouldn't even think about coming to Detroit. And over the past few years, it has changed night and day, where it's the opposite. We have people calling us and saying, what can I do to come to Detroit?
Yeah. And it's not really that the Detroit art community has changed, but maybe the city around these artists have changed. Is that true? Do you buy that? Maybe? That's a little bit of a leading question.
I mean, Tiff got into it a little bit. It's now become the cool place to be for the artists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
They want the title.
So, Robert, that actually brings me to
you
you,
want the
actually,
title,
which
right?
is sort of an interesting.
Gotta earn the title.
You guys are the newcomer to Detroit. You're bringing your space to Detroit. So tell us, why did you decide? I mean, the Galapagos art space in New York is terrific. It's really well known. It's very successful. Why are you moving to Detroit, and how has the reception been?
I think we were very impressed with the toughness and the resiliency of the artist community here, and the production, the values that the community was producing are imbued in what they do, and I think they're doing a great job. So we found this very attractive. There are three things that a creative ecosystem needs. It's time, space, and people. And arguably in New York, there are people without time or space at this point. And Detroit has time and space, and it's gaining the critical mass of people that are coming here. There is a great set of bones here, the Meds and the Eds, the Ann Arbor. I think there's a lot of opportunity for the communities to really put their work together and to not approach the success of Detroit as inevitable. I think that's sort of a mistake. As we learned about Las Vegas today, there's a lot of cities that are around the country that are competing for best and brightest that I think in many ways would have traditionally gone to New York City, but are in fact staying in sort of second cities, Philadelphia, Minneapolis, Portland, et cetera. And that capacity of artists that would have traditionally gone to a major capital like New York City are really up for grabs. And there's a spirit and an ethos in the idea of Detroit and in the collaboration of the artists and the community and the activists that are here that's very attractive. And it's a very spirited and open and strong community. But I think that, from the governor's emphasis on recruitment and retention to U of M's initiatives to move into Detroit and to work in the city, I think that all these things have to be very carefully coordinated with the sense that we want impact and we want fairness and a sense of justice, that there's equitable conditions created for the success of the people that are in Detroit already.
So Matt, your organization actually is sort of at the sort of forefront of a lot of these issues, sort of working with creative businesses and artists and entrepreneurs to think about how arts can be a driver for economic development. Just a little bit about what you do. Your organization
Yeah, you said it better than I did.
Pretty good.
I need to write that down.
Tell us a little bit about maybe specifically how your organization is working with these artists and creative organizations. What types of resources that you're doing, success stories that you've seen, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, the majority of our work boils down to helping creative practitioners grow revenues, reach new markets, and sell their product, sell their service. And so it's rooted in protecting intellectual property, pricing work, and finding ways to build capacity around the demand that exists. And so it's in some ways it's taking some of the business incubation acceleration models used for the tech community, shaking it up, turning it on its head, and finding ways to do that for early stage creative enterprises.
So what types of successes have you seen? Any examples?
So we've I see there being kind of two areas for success. One is with creative service providers in the city. You have these huge consumers of creative goods and services in the Midwest. Everything from GM, Ford, Chrysler, to Herman Miller, Hayworth, Steelcase, to Dow Chemical, to Kellogg, to John Deere. The list goes on and on. They all need advertising support. They need graphic design support, digital media support. Source this work in Detroit using Detroit creatives. We work harder, we're honest, we're more efficient, and you have University of Michigan, College for Creative Studies, Wayne State University all pumping out, Cranbrook all pumping out qualified graduates who could compete around the world with anyone. You have that piece. The other piece, you can't grow this creative in a silo. It needs to be connected to what we do in Detroit, and what we do in Detroit is make things. So
this is a maker community.
Yeah, and it still is. I mean, I hate the term post-industrial. We are just older industrial. We're still industrial. We've just figured out ways to automate some of it and become more efficient, so you don't need 30,000 people working in the River Rouge plant now. You can do the same amount of output with 5,000.
Sure.
So we have that infrastructure here. As a result of that infrastructure, we have the highest concentration and quantity of industrial and commercial designers in the country. So let's talk about the supply chain here. This is one of the few regions in North America where you can design, engineer, mass produce, and mass market a good. You can do it quicker, more efficiently, more effectively here. So let's connect creative to manufacturing. Let's figure out how we can use that as a value proposition to grow maker manufacturers.
So then arts moves from being just sort of an amenities-based item. I mean, this is what has been key to a lot of the work that Rich has written about for a long time, is that arts just isn't just about amenities and quality of place. It can, as you're suggesting, be an economic driver for sure.
Exactly. So today I was driving around, I'll keep this ambiguous because I didn't sign an NDA and I don't want to have to sign one. Driving around a firm who has come here because of the creative talent that we have, the design talent we have. They want to open up a manufacturing facility for 200 to 300 workers, 100,000 square feet of space. So finding that, that's all of a sudden jobs that go beyond those who have the privilege of a 4-year BFA, 3-year MFA degree.
For sure.
That's jobs for all Detroiters that reach beyond the Creative Corridor Innovation Cluster down here and into the neighborhoods.
Yep. So Amy, one of the things that is interesting that we've heard through almost every one of us has mentioned this is about the idea of community.
Yeah.
Bringing people together.
Yep.
And that's really what your organization with Detroit Soup does. So tell us, it's such a cool model.
Yeah.
Tell us about Detroit Soup and really how you bring people together and really, why is that grassroots community piece so important in a place like Detroit?
So a quick overview, Detroit Soup is a micro-granting dinner that funds creative projects in the city. People come to either a monthly citywide dinner or 9 neighborhood soups that meet quarterly. And you pay a suggested donation of $5. You get a potluck-style meal and a vote. And you have 4 presenters, non-assholey Shark Tank kind of style. We aren't Shark Tank.
You guys should live tweet that.
Please. At Amy Kaherl, I love it. You're a theological badmouth person. And so it's that sense where you have 4 minutes to pitch your idea, 4 questions back from the diners. And the money, and then the diners get a chance to eat, share, connect, and vote. And whoever has the most votes wins the money from the door. The money is the least interesting thing that happens at the soup, but it helps the food and the dollars, helps people wrap their head around like what's about to happen. It's just getting people ready. Sometimes I feel like we're in 1985 in this city. We're technologically disadvantaged. We have a 45% illiteracy rate. We only have a 70% graduation rate. People aren't going to 4-year colleges and institutions any longer. It's getting people the skills to communicate the things that matter to them. And it's finding the people who are tucked away that just aren't connected the way that a lot of people who have an iPhone and a car and things like that have happened. So for us, we're just creating safe space for dialogue, conversation, and support.
And it's cross-neighborhood, right? You have
Yeah.
people across different neighborhoods coming together.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's like the Citywide Soup happens monthly in an old film studio that a friend bought and rehabbed. And then in the neighborhoods, it's just, we understand that there's a lack of transportation. Something that happens in Jefferson Chalmers oftentimes isn't communicated to what's happening in Brightmoor. And so here's a chance to talk about and be a hub for resources of what's happening in communities. And I find it really fascinating that we actually know what's going on in the city. We actually know what the heartbeat is. We actually see what people want. And we're providing the opportunity to heal. I think a lot of times we act in our silos. I mean, and AKA in our friend group.
Yeah.
And here's a chance for a lot of friend groups to interact and just kind of know who we are and what people want.
Yep.
That's
And
it.
I mean, in that community cohesion piece, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as you go, as we work with cities all over the world, you know, we can tell you how to think about your industrial clusters. We can tell you how to think about talent attraction policies. But that community piece is really hard, right? That's the key piece.
But it
How do
doesn't
you?
have to be. I
Yeah.
think a lot of times the biggest thing that most people go, this is so simple. Guess what?
But it's a simple
It's so hard. We as humans make the system so hard.
Yeah.
We've created the system. We can also make it simple, and I've just created a model to make it simple. There's only 2 rules. Your idea has to be about the 138 square miles of the city plus Highland Park and Hamtramck, and you can't use PowerPoint to present. All of a sudden, you've created
I love
access
that.
and low barriers to entry.
I love that. No PowerPoint.
Because how many
To talk
times
to
have you
most-
sat in a meeting where PowerPoint doesn't work and all of a sudden, like, your meeting's over before it even started?
Yeah, you should talk to a room full of academics then. They love
I did, yes.
They love PowerPoint. So let's go. So let's do the quick round, right? Just a quick question for everyone, just to get maybe a really quick 25, 30-second thought on this. Yes, we're doing good on time. But just to run through these really quickly. So, you know, lots of people are moving here. I mean, lots of this whole, again, headline after headline, is Detroit the right place for artists?
But are they moving here?
I don't know.
Because there's more
You tell
people
me.
moving out. They say that the numbers are about staying the same. And so are more and more people moving into downtown, midtown? Yeah, well, now there's space for it, but that's not gentrification. I don't know. We're just talking about it differently, and money's coming in different ways around.
So let me ask you my question.
Sure.
How
Sorry.
receptive then?
I'm opinionated.
That's okay. I'm running the show today. I'm joking. You're in my
Not mad
class.
at it.
No, you're good. How receptive is Detroit to newcomers? What do you guys think?
Well, I know I always ask, why are you here, when somebody says that they're new to Detroit? Because
Yeah.
I want to know, like, what attracted you? If you're an artist, like, what is the deal, you know? So, I mean, Detroiters are territorial.
Yeah.
We are, yeah. So when you have new things happening every time you blink, it's kind of problematic, especially if they're things that aren't for you.
Yeah. And do you lose that maybe sense of authenticity too a little bit maybe?
I mean, if it happens so fast, it's just like, you know, going to buy a commercial good, you know, in relation to something that's handmade. I mean, you're going to lose the quality.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think, JJ?
I mean, I think a large part of the artist community is very welcome to outsiders, and they understand how important it is for the outsiders to come in and how much that will help them here locally on the ground. We can't just kind of confine ourselves just to Detroit. We need to have a lot of international presence for a lot of our local artists to shine. Our local artists also need to go to other cities. But there is a small group of people that I don't think see that yet, and they don't see the benefit of any outsiders coming. And I hope that doesn't hurt us in the long run of making some of the people, these international artists, or even people that want to do projects in the city, I hope it does not scare them away, because it doesn't benefit Detroit and it doesn't benefit the local artist community.
So Matt, you're working with businesses coming here all the time. Thoughts on the question? How open?
It's a fun balance working with longtime Detroiters as well as new businesses, so you get to see everything. You know, I think we have to remember that Detroit is global. It always has been global, and we sit on an international border with Windsor right across the river. There's no reason actually why we shouldn't have more connectivity with Windsor. Let's ask customs and all that. And we're home to Delta's second largest hub. And so there's a lot of inflow and outflow of new ideas. Where a lot of the skepticism comes from, at least from me in my 15 years in the city, is you see a lot of kind of flash in the pan ideas come. When I come here and, I know everything because I've seen it. I'm going to teach you Detroiters how to do things. Oh yeah, thank you. Let's you need to listen first. And I think that's where a lot of skepticism come from. Is like, open your ears, We're a global city. We've been global for 300 years and 500 years just in a different way before that.
Yeah.
Like, we get it. Don't come thinking that it's just a blank slate, open canvas. It's definitely a place for new ideas,
Yeah, it's
new
not the new
concepts,
frontier.
experimentation, but it's not the new frontier.
No.
Exactly.
Say that again.
It's not the new frontier. It's not.
Very good.
Yeah.
What do you think, Robert?
I think that there's a good reason to be slightly skeptical, to be perfectly honest. When the scene is very small and it's person to person, I think it's very easy to be, contribution and impact at the center of your core and your mission, and to discuss it and to talk about it. But as things grow, they grow really rapidly, and I think at that point it's, they're really, we live in a time when there's a spirit and an ethos of contribution, right? And so we're, social philanthropy, venture philanthropy, et cetera. And I think that it's wise to keep these ideas front and center because, the real issue is there's a skepticism whether people are being honest when they come or whether they're not being honest. And I think that that's a valid question. And as it grows bigger, the connectivity isn't as sort of honest, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to kind of fall away and to hide in the corners. And if Detroit is really going to be something that's different, then it's important that it be that thing that's different. And so I think that skepticism isn't necessarily a bad thing, because we've seen gentrification, take apart cities in big ways. But with the skepticism also comes an openness. Philadelphia has a great program for keeping property taxes at pre-gentrification levels for low-income people, so that they stay in the game as their property becomes more valuable. So they continue to be a stakeholder within it. So if we can find ways to keep these things and people involved, Paris has now passed a law where they have the first right of refusal on buying apartments in certain districts, so that they can keep them affordable. These things need big business, they need large corporations, they need the EDUs, they need the civic component, and they need the cultural and the activist community to be working together to be effective, and therefore to create a new model, which is the promise of Detroit, is that new models will be created here.
Yeah. So if you had the mayor here, and he's not here, but I wish he was, if the mayor and his staff was here, and this is sort of our last question that we really have time for, and I'd love to hear all of your thoughts because you're representing sort of different stakeholders. If you had the mayor here and his economic development staff, and you said, we're trying to really think about how we better can support Detroit's art and culture community, both from creating a more vibrant community, connected community also, but maybe even thinking about how do we create better businesses out of this and really commercialize this. What would be one or two things that the mayor could do and his staff could do to better support Detroit's arts and culture community? We don't have to go online.
I would in some way make it results-based. I mean, the promise of the foundations was that they were going to sort of cast marbles across the country and all these seeds would grow.
Yeah.
But they would engender independence, and that was the big promise. And in many cases, dependency has become an issue.
So
with that.
results-based is really important.
I would say results-based.
Okay.
The
Other
Ford
thought?
Foundation is now looking to make changes and adapt to that, I think.
Matt, you've given this question some thought. You have to.
Yeah, I think it goes back to coordination, and it's how do you coordinate the activity? How do you let's say co-create a strategy around the activity so everyone's individual work can be part of a larger kind of metrics-based narrative that begins to quantify the economic impact, output, and more importantly, the social impact of this work. So one can see what's been here for the past 300 years and begin to chart a course as to where it's going. So it's the decisions that are being made are more strategic.
So data plus community plus arts plus culture.
And communication.
Yeah, perfect.
And communication.
There we go.
Love it. Amy, what do you think?
I mean, my initial response was, when we started Soup, it was on a Sunday. Like, the city didn't run on a Sunday. So for us, we just did the work, and we're going to continue to do the work because I guess we don't even have a relationship with the mayor's office, and there's so much wealth of information that we're holding with our practice and finding these creative spaces. So my brain just goes, I guess there's just not. I've yet to see. I don't feel like we're ready as a city yet to kind of bring we need to get the lights on first.
Yeah.
We need to get some of these things going, and I feel like the foundations are supporting the arts in a way where the city just can't.
Sure.
And I guess that's okay. And then it's just more of listening, connecting. And when you think about mayor's offices, is for as long as I've been here, there has been 3 different mayors,
Sure.
and all of them have different agendas. And I don't think any artist wants to bend or change for somebody else's agenda. It's more of listening, creating opportunities to allow artists to continue to make work.
So this really sort of more inclusive listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pulling people together, right? Because I think Tiffany,
Yeah,
you said
talking.
the first word out of your mouth was communication.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talent that's here in Detroit. It always has been. That's part of the history, and that's part of, what is, attractive to newcomers. Everybody goes to see all of this architecture that's been here. And I feel like we still have talent. There's new talent coming out of these institutions, or not. But, but I mean, there's people that can be utilized in a lot of these new projects. And I feel we're not being included in some regard. They'll go to firms, architectural firms in Boston and things like that. And I'm like, well, what's wrong with Detroit? I mean, we have talent, people are getting degrees every day or every year. So it would be nice to utilize some of that.
So utilize the people, the talent, the community that's here really, and create this, again, inclusiveness, it seems, is the thing I keep hearing.
Totally.
JJ, last comment for the group, maybe.
I would just say, with going back to the mayor's office, I think the biggest thing is kind of linking all of the parts together. And he, in the mayor's office, could be the person that could do that. And obviously right here, we all represent 5 very different parts of the artist community, but we all don't get to sit around and talk to each other for very long.
Sit this
and kind
close,
of
at least.
and sit this close. And so, he really could be the one that could link the entire artist community together and really support. They have obviously not been able to do it financially because of everything else going on in the city in the past, but in the future, there's a lot of other resources that they could use.
There is. It's about finding ways to use other people's money to do that. And that's one thing that actually the city can do a very good job at, is finding ways to better leverage state economic development dollars for arts and culture, national economic development dollars for arts and culture, and start using a language that...
Even better private sector dollars too, right? That's one of the things that when you even look, people talk about the Mike Bloomberg legacy of New York, and yes, he had issues and the gentrification issues, but the one thing that they did really well was use dollars from multi-sectors really, really well, and a lot of lessons can be learned there. Okay, thank you guys. Please join me in thanking our great panel.